everyone, and welcome to TalksPed. We continue our conversation and finding out more about how technology can support individuals with disability. In today's conversation, I have two panelists who will be joining me to share their work and talk about how some of the technology is helping individuals with disability. I have Mr. Naoto Ienaga, Assistant Professor from Keio University in Yokohama, Japan. And I have an occupational therapist with me, Angeline Fernandez, who works as a pediatric occupational therapist with Ascend Rehab here in the Bay Area in California. Welcome to both of you to TalksPed. Mr. Naoto, I would like to begin with you. If you could share with our audience a little bit more about your research, which we will be dropping more details about your work. I will be sharing your publication, and also share a little bit about your work and your team with our audience today.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you. So my major is computer vision and machine learning technology, and at Keio University, I'm doing researches about mainly to apply CB or ML for some practical regions. One of them is occupational therapy, and other regions are linguist or aquaculture or robot operations. And recently I'm doing research to understand human perception in terms of computer vision, computer. From computer side view.
Yes.
And to do research on occupational therapy, I'm belonging to a team. And in that team, mainly 7 people do working, and 4 of them are occupational therapists, and 3 are engineers of CB or ML, including me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that background, Mr. Naoto. So I know that you mentioned to me a little bit about your research work where you're helping occupational therapists perform in their job, where they do a lot of their role involves assessment and qualitative assessment and quantitative assessment. And you're helping in making these process of assessment much more efficient through the use of computer vision technology. So I'm going to now let Angeline share a little bit more about what is her role when she's doing these evaluation and therapy. How long typically it takes you, Angeline, to do these assessments for children on the autism spectrum disorder?
So as a school-based occupational therapist, assessments typically depend on the skill, or I should say the type of assessment that we are conducting. If you talk about children with autism, they have varying levels of skills. We typically assess in the areas of fine motor, visual perceptual, self-care, and sensory processing. It depends on whether the skill level of the child, the level of autism, the severity. Depending on those, I can do either standardized or non-standardized assessments. Most of the times, it may end up being non-standardized or clinical observations. But let's just say if I am able to do standardized assessments, then I would see myself spending 2 or maybe 3 sessions, assessment sessions with the student. And each session, I would say, would be roughly between 20 to 30 minutes. And if I'm doing a non-standardized assessments, if it's clinical observations, if it's a student who has difficult attending to the task and may not sit for a standardized testing, right, who may not respond appropriately to a standardized testing, then I could get my clinical observations done even in 2 sessions. So, which again would be about 20 to 30 minutes. Besides this, Namita, we also have to understand the time with the student one-on-one is just part of assessment. There's also our classroom observations, where we get a lot of rich information on how the students is performing in their natural environment. And then we have to interview the teachers and the classroom staff to get that information as well. So if you talk about the one-on-one time with the student, it was the assessment sessions, as I explained. But if you talk about the overall evaluation, then it adds up to a much more time.
Sure, sure. So I think for purposes of today's discussion, I think Mr. Naoto was explaining to us how he's using some of the technology and CV vision and machine learning also in terms of supporting the evaluation process. So yeah, I totally agree with you that the evaluation process is a lot more holistic for children, and it has to be for all areas of need that we are assessing. But Mr. Naoto, could you tell us a little bit more about how technology, when you talked a little bit also about machine learning, give us some example and explaining how some of this technology, in as much as you can simplify the language for somebody who is trying to understand how it supports them, like how accurate it becomes, and then how does an OT time gets more efficiently used now if they're using some of these technology.
Okay. For example, by using CV and ML technology, we can easily measure facial expression or body key point position. Body key points are, for example, the position of shoulder or the joints, or shoulder or elbow or wrist, So the component of such technology is that just the machine learning model trained by using many pairs data. For example, we just annotate face images of face and annotate facial expressions. For example, this image shows smile and this image shows sad face. Then we should collect so many data, and just by feeding them to the machine learning model, then machine learning can automatically train the rule between the image of face and the expression. Then model can predict facial expression from to the unknown images, like that. Then, so just by collecting many data, machine learning can many things to predict. Yeah.
So a lot of these technologies are still in the process of research, right, Mr. Naoto? You said a lot of work is still happening in the area of machine learning using and computer vision. It's still at the lab work, and a lot of new publication like your work has been published, and more publications will be sharing about how some of these are now available and coming down to the user level and getting a product out of some of these technologies still takes a lot of time, and we want to make sure that it is accurate and user friendly before it gets out. So that is a process, and you shared with us a little bit about some of those barriers too. So Angeline, in terms of earlier Mr. Naoto was sharing about how not just with evaluation process but also with the daily living skills that OTs are working on with individuals on the autism spectrum with their daily helping in their ADLs, whether it's tying your shoes to eating to dressing or bathing yourself. So I know all these are areas where you're supporting. So could you tell a little bit more about to our audience where your role lies, and then we'll look at how the technology part from Mr. Naoto. So go ahead, Angeline, tell us a little bit more about your work. Oh, sorry, you are unmuted.
Sorry about that. As an occupational therapist, and again, like I was saying, right now my main role is working in the school-based system. I tend to, as far as self-help skills, yes, I mean we look at the overall performance area, but there could be many factors impacting the performance. We would look at sensory processing skills. Sometimes, especially if you're talking about children with autism, they may have sensory processing issues. They're not able to tolerate sensations from the environment, and that would affect their performance and skills. We would be also looking at motor planning. They would, sometimes some students have difficulty with even imitation, which is the most basic form of motor planning. And many of our ADLs are multi-step activities, so that requires a lot of planning. We have to keep in mind some children may also have difficulty with fine motor or visual perceptual skills, which of course impact the performance in ADLs. So those are the main performance areas that we evaluate, assess, and provide accommodations or modifications or treatment in. But we also have to keep in mind the environment, the context. So that's another, sometimes we have to modify the environment, which would definitely come as part of our role. We have to modify the tasks so that the child is able to be successful in performing their activities of daily living skills.
Thank you, Angeline. Yes, to explain us the width of how many, what are the different places where occupational therapists support individuals on the spectrum. Mr. Naoto, if you can tell us a little bit more about the technology piece of how you're doing some work where you're helping, you're looking at technology to improve the daily living skills of individuals on the autism spectrum, or how OTs support their work.
Currently, we are focusing on evaluation or measurement, and what we have done is for to make the tasks, current tasks to evaluate children's state easier or more accurate but for such tasks themselves are very labor how can I say very tough work or time consuming or expensive. So if we can evaluate or measure same things from daily life activities, it's very excellent because we don't need any special setting or special tasks anymore. So hopefully in the future we would like to get information needed from the daily life activities of children, such as the eating scene or when they are wearing their clothes or wearing shoes or like that.
Right. So you're trying to use what they do in their daily life and get data from that to help maybe measure things so that occupational therapists, when they're doing the evaluations, they can use that data to hopefully make measurements or do their work more efficiently, is what I'm trying to understand, right? So thank you. No, Angeline, what are some other places where you're seeing the use of technology when providing services?
So as of now, in the schools, I see technology being used a lot, definitely, when in the classrooms, first of all, during circle time and stuff, the teachers, they use a lot of technology, especially for students with autism. They are engrossed and they are more responsive and engaged when they have some something on a screen, simply put. As far as during therapy sessions, we could have visual motor activities or visual motor apps or visual perceptual apps that we can use, or we also have some handwriting apps to kind of to teach the children, letter formation. So definitely, I do see technology being used during therapy sessions. Another area is also for, since we were talking about ADLs, activities of daily living skills. I have read some research on how video modeling or video prompting, wherein you're kind of recording and you are playing back a video of the task to be performed, and the student would observe it, of course, with the help of an adult, either a caregiver or a therapist, and is able to then perform that task by based off the video modeling or the prompting. So that's another area where I have seen technology to be helpful in my place of work.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Naoto and Angeline, for sharing and highlighting some of your work and how you're using technology to support individuals with disability. And I think there is a lot more coming in the future, where we both see technology is so much integrated part of our life. And the challenge is, like Mr. Naoto is saying, to make it more applicable, to bring it down to that daily living skills and helping individuals. And Angeline will hopefully be able to use it more in classrooms and be able to use it more at home, and parents can access it easily and use it easily. And that's when we will know how it will be an effective tool for all of us. So in spite of all the barriers that comes along with technology, we also understand that there is a great utility for it. So it's a fine line of how we use it and how helpful it'll be. So this has been a wonderful discussion, and I really enjoyed speaking with both of you, and hopefully our audience got something to take away today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.